Hi, welcome to the Introduction to T-Shirt Screen Printing. In this DVD, you will learn the basics of T-shirt screen printing as taught by some of the leaders in the T-shirt printing industry. Before we get started, consider this: no matter where you go in the world, whether it's your hometown or a tiny village in South America, you're sure to see several printed T-shirts. In fact, it would be a sure bet that about 85% of the people you'll encounter today will be wearing some type of printed garment. T-shirts are a universal way of expressing yourself to the world, so if you're considering T-shirt screen printing as a career or just as a creative outlet, you're making a very wise decision. T-shirt screen printing is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there's no end in sight. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the information. And be sure to review it often. Step 1. Screen coating and developing. In this section, we will discuss the different types of screen mesh, emulsion and coating screens, drying and storage, developing screens, the various methods of developing, and rinsing out images and drying screens. Let's get started. First, you'll notice that we have two different kinds of screens. The one on the left is 156 mesh. The number 156 refers to the amount of openings per square inch. These openings will allow ink to flow through. On the other end of the mesh size spectrum, you have the lower numbers that are used for printing thick or specialty inks like metallics, glitters, and puff inks. An example of this would be 80 mesh to 110 mesh. The coarser or more open the mesh, the thicker the deposit of ink on your garment. You would use this mesh to print light color inks on dark garments, where more opacity is required for a quality print. The larger the number, the finer the detail you can develop onto a screen. An example of this would be 240 mesh to 305 mesh. The higher numbered mesh is what you would use for reproducing photographs or for color process work. Here's a helpful tip. The 156 mesh screens represent the middle ground or the average mesh for most print jobs. You can use this mesh for a wide variety of designs without too many development problems. And now a quick overview on screens. The mesh is attached to the frame by stretching the chosen size mesh on a large power stretcher. A number of frames are arranged under the stretched mesh, and the mesh is allowed to lay or rest on the frame while still in the stretcher. A fast-setting glue is applied with a squeegee to the perimeter of the frame, securing the mesh quickly and firmly. Another helpful tip: when the mesh in your screen becomes torn or blocked, you don't necessarily have to throw it out or buy a new frame. You can simply get them restretched for about 1/3 the cost of a new frame. You can buy the equipment and materials to restretch them yourself, but unless you turn over a large amount of screens, it is more cost-effective to have them done by a professional frame shop. You'll find a list of restretch shops in the suppliers list at the back of the printing manual. To better understand the following steps, we will refer to the side of the frame that the screen material is attached to as the bottom or print side. The other side of the frame, which forms sort of a tray, will be referred to as the top or ink side. Remember these designations, as we'll be using them frequently during the following lessons. Now we need to discuss the photographic emulsion that coats the screens and serves as the base for the detailed stencils we create. The emulsion is a two-part system made up of a dyed white glue type material and a diazo light-sensitive activating chemical. The diazo chemical comes in a sealed container that is opened and mixed with warm to hot water, shaken, and then mixed in the dyed glue base. Make sure you use a wooden stir stick or spoon to mix the sensitizer into the glue base. Helpful tip: any metal mixing object reacts with the diazo sensitizer and renders the mixed emulsion useless, so always use a wooden stir stick or spoon. Adding the sensitizer to the glue base makes this emulsion mixture light and photosensitive. The emulsion mixture needs to be kept in a cool, dark place. Take extra care to make sure the lid is on tight to prevent air circulation across the surface of the emulsion. When stored properly, a sensitized container of emulsion has a shelf life of approximately 6 months once it is mixed. To coat the screens, we will use a scoop coater. It resembles a trough made out of extruded aluminum, with plastic end caps. Notice that there is a thin edge and a thicker rounded edge. We will be using the thin edge to coat the screen. You will need to cover your work table with newspaper, as coating can be messy. Get the sensitized emulsion from the cool storage place and remove the lid. Pour a small amount into the scoop coater. Helpful hint: it is better to add more emulsion later than to have too much at first. Too much makes the coating process very messy. Make sure you replace the lid on the emulsion container. Hold the scoop coater in the middle with your 4 fingers hooked around the ridge on the bottom and your thumb holding the rounded edge at the top. Hold the screen frame with the bottom up at a 45-degree angle. Contact the frame with the coater at about 2 inches above the bottom in the vertical center of the screen. Tilt the scoop coater forward until a consistent bead of emulsion contacts the mesh. If needed, rotate the coater slightly right or left to compensate for any unlevel condition. With a firm and consistent stroke, glide the coater up the screen, stopping 2 inches from the top. If done properly, the screen should sing. Do not pull the coater away from the screen at this point. Simply hold the coater tight to the screen and tilt it back to allow the excess bead of emulsion to run back into the trough of the coater. When the emulsion is in the trough, use a quick upward flick of your wrist to remove the coater from the screen. Practice doing this until you have no more globs of emulsion left at the top of the screen. Now flip the screen over so the bottom side is at a 45-degree angle and repeat the entire coating technique. Make sure you go slow and steady, and that you take the time to wait at the top. Flip the screen over again and repeat the coating procedure 2 more times. The last coating strokes, top and bottom, should be more of a scraping motion rather than an emulsion applying technique. This is done to remove any lines, ridges, or globs of emulsion that may be present on the screen. When you are satisfied that the screen is finished, place it in your cool, light-tight drying cabinet, bottom side down. In humid or cold climates, you may want to add a small fan or even a hairdryer to expedite the drying of the screens. If you do use a hairdryer, make sure you use the low setting only. Coat any remaining screens in the same manner as the first one. The proper procedure is 2 coats both top and bottom, then at least 1 scraping coat on each side. When you are done with all the screens you're going to coat, you will now pour the excess emulsion back into the container to reuse it at a later date. To clean the remainder out of the coater, we suggest using your fingers to scrape the emulsion into the can. You may prefer a spatula, stir stick, or possibly even wearing dishwashing gloves during this step. We have found that despite being messy, the emulsion washes off easily in warm water. Make sure you wash the scoop coater thoroughly, taking special care in the nooks and crannies. It is a common mistake to neglect the cleaning of this tool. They are very expensive to replace and are critical to proper screen coating. Wipe the emulsion container down with a rag and securely replace the lid. Store it back in a cool, dark place. Now clean up the newspapers and throw them away. Be sure to wash your hands thoroughly and any utensils that you might have used. In this step, practice makes perfect, but messes will occur. Fortunately, cleanup does not affect the developed screen. Now we will discuss screen developing. In this segment, you will need the following tools and materials: a T-square, Scotch tape, art film positives, a 16 by 16 inch piece of glass for sun developing, a blacklight exposure box, and an exposure box weight. Let's get started. We have done the artwork, produced the film positives, and coated the screens. Now it's time to expose or burn the images on the screens to create the stencils. Set up a table near the screen cabinet, out of direct sunlight. Incandescent and fluorescent lighting is safe to work under with the sensitized screens. Make sure that you have the film positives organized and that you work with a definite purpose when you pull the sensitized screen out of the cabinet. We will discuss the sun developing method first. Have your T-square, Scotch tape, film positives, and glass ready and organized on the table. When you are organized and ready to proceed, pull the pre-coated screen from the drying cabinet and set it on the table bottom side up. This next step may get confusing, so make sure you fully understand it before you proceed. Pick up the first film positive and set it on the undeveloped screen with the right side face down. The image should appear upside down to you, and any lettering should be wrong side up. Take the T-square and set it to the edge of the frame and measure up to the bottom of the film positive. The bottom of the film positive can be defined as the edge of film that is closest to the bottom of the design. The measurement can be any number, as long as it is consistent from frame to design on each screen you burn on each set of any set of art film positives. Helpful tip: try to center the design in the screen. Usually from about 4 to 7 inches is about normal, with 6 inches being the standard. As you measure, place a small piece of Scotch tape on each of the bottom corners of the transparencies to hold it in place when you have it where you want it. Roughly center the piece of glass on the screen, covering the image to be burned. Helpful tip: please read the screen developing guide before proceeding any further. Understand what you are trying to do before you attempt this process. This part of screen printing has the longest learning curve and can be the most frustrating. It doesn't have to be hard if you think ahead and understand the process. At this point, make sure your washout sink is ready and out of direct sunlight. Have newspaper ready to blot the exposed screen when it is done. Be sure to observe where the sun is in the sky and where the quickest exit to shade is after you've developed the screen. Pick up the screen using your thumbs to pinch the glass tight against the film positive and screen. Before you walk out of the room and into the sunlight, make sure you have the glass or bottom side pointed toward the sun. Now walk out and into the sunlight. Make sure the image to be exposed is pointing directly towards the sun. As soon as the light fully hits the screen, start counting. Use the 1001, 1002 method for 15 to 20 seconds. With enough practice, you will see the screen emulsion change from a yellow-tan color to a mauve-lavender color. As soon as you reach the end of the development time, hustle the exposed screen into the nearest shade and to the washout sink. Immediately start spraying the screen, as the water will halt the exposing process. After wetting the entire screen on both sides, use medium pressure to wash out the screen from the bottom side. Keep the spray nozzle moving around the design area until you are confident the image is washed out completely. Hold the screen up to a light source in the washout area and check for any remaining blockage. Blockage appears as a haze in an otherwise clear image area. If there is a problem, wash again lightly and check the screen frequently for other problems. Blot the screen on both sides with newspaper. Do not rub the screen, as this step is to pull moisture and excess emulsion away from the image area. Once you have removed the excess moisture and are done with the newspaper, set the screen in the sun or near a fan for expedited drying. Helpful tip: you will know you are getting good exposure when, as you pull the artwork from the developed screen, there is a noticeable difference in color in the image area. While the exposed screen has turned a lavender color, the image area should be a noticeable yellowish shade. Using the unfiltered blacklight developing box for screen exposure is slightly different. The main difference being the development time and the setup of the artwork on the box. To get started, roughly center the artwork on the development box glass, not the screen. Use a T-square to measure up to the bottom of the film. The same theory applies as with the sun, but you do want the design face up. In this method, remember that all film positives must be the same distance from the edge of the box, no matter what that distance is. Place the first coated screen on the glass and artwork, top or tray side up. Make sure to align the bottom side edge of the screen with the edge of the box that you measured your film positives from. Now place the blockout weight on the top side of the screen mesh directly over the design. Turn the timer to the desired amount of time, using the screen development guide or your personal experience to set the correct exposure length. When the timer shuts off, lift the blockout weight from the screen and take the screen to the washout sink. Wash the image area out using the same procedure that we used for the sun development method. Blot the screen and set it out to dry. Continue developing the rest of your screens in the same manner. When all the screens are burned and dried, we move on to the printing stage. Steps 2 and 3, machine and screen setup and printing the job. In these combined segments, we will learn about screen prep and image alignment. We will print a test and registration sample, pinholing, site organization, shirt placement, printing the shirt, drying the shirt, and stacking and folding. Let's get started. During these segments, you will need the following tools and supplies: blue masking tape, developed screens, a Sharpie felt tip marker, T-square, fingernail polish, desired colors of inks, squeegees, stir sticks, rags, and pellons or test shirt. It is now time to set up the printer and literally reassemble the design on the machine. Start by first marking some setup guidelines on the shirt board. Using the Sharpie marker in the T-square, draw a center line down the front back axis of the shirt board. Then draw multiple lines side to side. Positioning of these lines is not critical, as they're used solely as a visual guide. The first screen that you set up should either be the black screen if applicable, or the screen with the most obvious alignment cues, like an outline. Bring the print arm down into the registration gate and back off the adjusting knobs on the print head clamp if necessary. Helpful tip: take note at this point of the image area. The stencil blockout should appear to be a purple lavender color, while the image area takes on a white transparent look. This contrast is very important when registering the rest of the screens. Slide the first setup screen into the clamp on the print head. Using the guidelines that we drew on the board before, center the image on the shirt board. When you are satisfied that the design is centered, tighten the knobs on the print head. Helpful tip: tighten the knobs only enough to hold the screen firmly in place. Do not over-tighten or use any tools as an aid. Over-tightening causes the threads in the printhead to strip and the jaw of the printhead to widen out. Now, tape off the edges of the frame and screen to block out any open areas on the sides. Start on one side of the frame and tear off a piece of tape roughly equal to the length of that one side. Place the tape halfway up from the frame side and down into the seam where the mesh is attached to the frame. Tear off another piece the same length as the last and place it next to the last one, using a slight overlap. Switch to the other side of the frame and repeat the taping steps. Care should be taken not to cover up any part of the image area while taping off the frame. Keep the process going by taping off the front and the back portions of the screen tray using the same method. Store the roll of tape in the center of the printhead for later and easy access. Now, lift the screen back up and get the can of spray adhesive and lightly mist the shirt board. Use either a Pellon practice square or an old shirt to set up the test print on the board. Helpful tip: every wholesale shirt manufacturer has a center line crease in the middle of their shirt. Use this to center your shirt down the middle of the aids that you first drew on the board with the Sharpie. Drop the screen into the registration gate and let it rest on the test print. Helpful tip: make it a habit at this stage of the setup to tighten the nylon registration bolts to the printhead arm. Unless you do this on the first screen, you may have screen shifting problems and slight blurring of the image. Open the correct color container of ink. This one is black. And use a wooden stir stick to place a conservative bead of ink on the screen tray towards the back or where the frame is attached to the printhead. Try not to put any ink from the can on the open image area. Get a squeegee. Place it in the back of the screen and let it rest on the printhead clamp. Grab the squeegee at the extreme far ends of the handle. Your 4 fingers on each hand should rest in the depression down where the blade joins the wood handle. These fingers control the pressure, speed, and quality of your print. Helpful tip: it is not unusual at all to have your hands tire or cramp when you're learning this process. Take it easy and allow for more time to print your jobs. When getting used to handling the squeegee, it is always normal for one hand to be stronger than the other. This causes a slightly lighter print on one side of the shirt. Just beware of this, and when you pull the squeegee, try to compensate with more pressure on the weak side. Set the blade of the squeegee in the bead of ink and pull slightly forward. Make sure that there is at least a 1/4 inch bead of ink across the whole face of the blade. Tilt the squeegee forward at a 45-degree angle so that the polyurethane blade is contacting the screen on its forward edge. Helpful tip: it is very important to use the edge of the blade to knife the ink through the screen. Do not fall into the habit of laying the squeegee down on the face of the blade and smashing the ink through the mesh. Smashing causes blurred images and substantial residual ink buildup on the back of the preceding screens when you're doing multicolor jobs. If you find yourself smashing, stop and concentrate on good squeegee control before it becomes a habit. Press down with your fingers and pull the squeegee slowly and evenly across the image area, stopping about 3 inches past the top of the image. Make sure you do not release the pressure until you have stopped the forward momentum of the pull. Helpful tip: it is not necessary to pull the ink all the way to the frame. Pulling too far causes the ink to rest up near the front of the frame and creates a mess magnet. Stopping 3 inches after the image area leaves you plenty of room and cuts down the mess. You can tell when your pressure is good on the squeegee stroke when you hear the screen sing. The sing is just the sound of the squeegee front edge dragging across the mesh with sufficient pressure. Repeat these steps again for a second pass across the image area. When you have finished your stroke, use a slight wrist flick to lift the majority of the remaining bead of ink off the screen. This is done to return as much ink as possible to the ink deposit at the back of the frame. Helpful tip: an alternative or complementary method of ink retrieval is pushing the ink backwards to the ink trough. This should be done with extremely light squeegee pressure and only while the screen is off the print surface. Too much pressure and you will tend to load the image area with ink, causing blurring on the preceding prints. Now, lift the screen and check your print. If the print is too light in areas, drop the screen back down and print again, compensating for your stroke to darken the appropriate areas. Now check your test print for unwanted pinholes or spots of ink on the shirt that shouldn't be there. Helpful tip: there are many reasons for pinholes in a screen. For more information, read the troubleshooting guide on developing screens at the back of your manual. To block the pinholes, take your roll of tape from the middle of the print head and tear off a very small piece. Place it on the bottom of the screen to cover one or more holes. The tape is put on the bottom of the screen to avoid being peeled off by the stroke of the squeegee. Repeat the taping process until you are satisfied the screen is right. Helpful tip: use standard fingernail polish to block small pinholes in tight design areas. Not only does it have a built-in small brush, but it dries very quickly so you can keep working. What color you use is not important, but the fashion-conscious printer will always look for the appropriate shade. When you are finished correcting any pinhole problem, rotate the print head clockwise to the next print head. Make sure you leave the test print on the shirt board undisturbed. You will use this print to line up or register the remaining frames. Drop the print head down into the registration gate and find the screen that will be the lightest color on the print. Place the screen in the print head clamp and use the white transparent image of the screen to line up or register the screen. Use the previous print's outline or design cues as a guide. When correctly registered, there should be no overlap of the previous image visible directly through the image area. When satisfied with the positioning, place one hand flat in the image area and tighten the print head clamp with the other. Lift the screen out of the registration gate and immediately put it back down and in. Check for registration and adjust if necessary. Repeat the taping, inking, printing, and pinholing steps from the initial screen now. Make sure you make any corrections to registration or pinholing before proceeding to the next screen. Rotate the print head a quarter of a turn clockwise and repeat the previous process again for the third screen. Again, make sure that all adjustments are made before proceeding. Rotate the print head again and set the fourth print head arm down in the registration gate. Set the final up as you did the others and repeat all the required steps to print. When you print this screen, this should give you the first idea of what your design will look like when printed. Be sure to be totally satisfied with each screen before moving on to actually printing the job. Remove the initial test print and place it on the dryer belt. It is recommended that you go back and do a second test print to ensure everything is set up correctly. Now that you're satisfied, it's time to print the shirts. Helpful tip: stack the shirts with the opposite sides up from what side you are printing. When you grab the shirt and let the top fall as you are transferring it to the machine, you will find that the shirt will be correct side up when you place it on the shirt board. Place a folding chair at the back of the dryer. Move your inks where they won't contact the shirts. Arrange your blank shirts in a position where there is little wasted motion when printing the job. Spray the shirt board with a light misting of spray adhesive. Handling the shirt that you print takes a little practice. You already know that each shirt has a center line creased into it at the factory. Your shirt should be stacked opposite side up with the bottom or large opening facing the machine. The stack should be roughly waist high. Lift and separate the middle of the bottom shirt opening with your hands flattened out. Move your hands out to the sides of the shirt with your hands into the shirt approximately up to the base of the thumb. Rotate your hands outward 90 degrees so that they are vertical. Spread your fingers out, using them and your thumbs to stretch the opening of the shirt as wide as possible. Now pull the shirt off the stack and rotate your body to the shirt board. Spread the opening of the shirt over the shirt board and pull till the shirt will not go any further. Grab the shoulder sleeve seam with your thumbs and index fingers and pull the shirt back towards you until the correct height is obtained. Make sure as you do this that you use the crease on the shirt to center the shirt on the board. Use the flat of your hand to smooth out any wrinkles of the shirt on the board. Bring the outline screen down and check for proper print placement of the shirt on the board. Helpful tip: mark the placement with a piece of masking tape at the collar on the shirt board. This will allow you to place every shirt at the proper height without measuring. Now you're ready to print. Start with the lightest color ink first and print to the darkest color, or the screen you used for the initial setup. Be sure to keep your squeegee angle at 45 degrees. Use the blade edge to knife the ink into the shirt. Use good and even pressure, and move slowly and evenly. When you are satisfied with that print, rotate the screen and proceed with the next colors. When you have finished printing all the colors, it is time to dry the shirt. Grab the shirt with your index fingers and thumbs at the shoulder seams, where the sleeves in the front and back are sewn together. Pull up gently, taking your time to prevent the releasing shirt from flopping on itself. Now carefully pull the shirt off the board and move it over to the dryer belt. This next step takes some time to perfect, so be patient. Still holding the shirt at the seams, move it towards the conveyor belt, making sure to have the bottom 2 inches of the shirt drag across the edge of the dryer frame. This will cause a slight drag, and the shirt will have a slight print down angle. Keep dragging the shirt slowly across the moving belt until the bottom edge of the shirt is in the middle of the belt. With a slight snap of your wrist, bring the top of the shirt back towards you to the nearest edge of the belt and let go. This should leave the print area centered on the belt and moving into the dryer tunnel. Make sure to pat down any part of the garment that is not lying flat so it will not scorch in the dryer. Let it run through the dryer tunnel and fall into the chair on the other side of the machine. Check for curing by feeling and stretching the print. An undercured print will crack or still be wet. If you need more curing, turn down the belt speed until you get the desired result. If the shirt is scorching or smoking excessively, turn the belt speed up. When you are satisfied that your print is properly cured and dried, lay it over the back of the chair and resume printing the rest of the shirts. Helpful tip: this process will become second nature very quickly. Strive for good technique and patience as you get comfortable. As in anything else, practice makes perfect. Step 4. Cleanup. In this segment, we will discuss machine breakdown, screen removal and reclaiming of unused ink, detaping screens, screen cleaning, screen reclaiming, and residual images and ink blockage. Let's get started. Probably the least favorite job of screen printing is cleanup. However, with the correct equipment, it doesn't have to be that difficult. Here is a list of supplies and tools needed for the job. A pair of chemical-resistant gloves, vapor-tight face mask, putty knife, safety goggles, plastic bus pan, parts cleaner, 5 gallons of mineral spirits or paint thinner, an empty t-shirt box, drop cloth, screen opener, rags, plastic scrub brush, sink with spray nozzle, spray bottle, and screen reclaimer. Let's pick up from where we left off when printing the job. The screens from the job remain set up in the machine. Place a rag folded in quarters on the shirt board. Leave one of the unfolded ends open to you at the top of the board. Select a screen to start and place the corresponding color of ink container on the folded rag. Set the screen down on the shirt board, but off to the side out of the registration gate. Take the putty knife and scrape the remaining ink off the screen and squeegee and place it back in the container. Place that ink container back in storage. Take the ink-covered putty knife and place it between the two layers of the folded rag up to the handle. Press down firmly with one hand while drawing out the putty knife with the other. This will clean the knife, yet leave no visible mess. Now repeat the previous steps for all remaining screens. You will not have to replace the rag if you just use the other side in the different layers. Now, remove the squeegees from the screen and take them to your designated cleanup area. Get an empty t-shirt or other cardboard box and set it near the profit printer. We will now start removing the masking tape from the screens. We recommend leaving the screens in the machine during the detaping process, as the printhead acts as another set of hands. Doing it this way, you will avoid trying to balance the screen as you remove the tape. First, remove the blockout tape from the back of the screen. Next, on the top side, grab the edge of the tape in a corner and simply pull and remove the entire amount of tape. Here is where we use the cardboard box in order to dispose of the tape, instead of your trash can. We recommend this because the tape tends to stick to the sides of a standard trash can, preventing it from being emptied. You can use the same box for cleanup on other print jobs until it's full, and then dispose of it properly. Remove the detaped scraped screens from the print head clamps. Move them to the cleanup area for the scrub down. Before using any chemicals pertaining to cleanup, make sure you've put on your respirator, solvent gloves, and safety goggles. A word of warning: be careful when working with these and other chemicals. Always wear protective clothing, goggles, respirator, and gloves anytime there is a risk of exposure to harsh substances. Your eyes and skin absorb toxins as fast as if you would ingest them. Always work with caution. Spread your drop cloth adjacent to the parts cleaner. Open the fire stop lid of the cleaner tub. Pick up a screen and place it in the tub. Holding the screen vertically with one hand, use the other hand to wash the screen down with a solvent-soaked rag. Flip the screen over and repeat until the ink residue is removed. For stubborn deposits of ink, use the plastic scrub brush or the can of spray screen cleaner until the print area is clean. Remove the screen from the parts cleaner and lay it horizontally on the drop cloth to drain. Repeat these steps with any remaining screens, limiting yourself to 8 screens at a time. After you've let the screens drain on the drop cloth, we are ready for the reclamation process. The first thing you will do is take the solvent-clean screens and spray them down with water in your washout sink. This removes the oily solvent film to prep for the next step. To start the reclaiming process, fill your spray bottle with the commercial screen reclaiming fluid. Helpful tip: in the beginning, when saving money is a bigger factor than saving time, you can cut considerable cost by substituting household bleach for the commercial reclaimer. The only difference is that it takes bleach about 4 times longer to dissolve the emulsion stencil. Take your first screen, place it in the washout sink, and spray it on both sides with reclaimer. Set the sprayed screen in the corner of the sink, and repeat the process with the next screen. Reclaim as many screens at a time as you can easily work with in your particular sink. 6 to 8 screens at a time should be your limit in the beginning. Let the screen set to let the reclaimer do its work. You will notice the emulsion on the screen lightening and turning to a tan color. As you see the emulsion start to dissolve, start spraying the screen with a strong stream of water. This will blast the emulsion out of the screen. If you have stubborn areas, respray with reclaimer and let set while you start spraying out the other frames. Helpful tip: never let the screen reclaimer or bleach dry on the screens. This will cause the existing stencil to remain permanently adhered to the screen mesh. If this happens, you have no choice but to get the screen re-stretched. As you continue to wash out the frames, stack them vertically with the top or print side facing slightly down in order to better drain the frames. If you are in a hurry to turn the frames around and get them coated again, set the frames in the sun or next to a fan. Now at this point, you may notice stained residual images or ghost images left on the screen fabric. Ghost images are just stains from ink that has discolored the mesh fabric. To check for actual screen blockage, hold the screen up to a light source. Helpful tip: ghost images are common and not a problem as long as there is no solid blockage present. Screen print supply stores may try to sell you haze removers for your screens. The remover is expensive and not necessary unless you're having problems developing the screen. Keep your money and spend it elsewhere. If you do have a blockage, there are a few options that you have to clean them out. The simplest is to take your screens to the nearest self-serve car wash and blow the blockage out with a couple of quarters in the high-pressure wand. If you start doing major business and having lots of screens to clean, you may consider buying a portable pressure washer. Another way is to use lacquer thinner, a scrub brush, and some rags. Lots of elbow grease is involved, but it works in a pinch. Again, make sure you use gloves, goggles, and a respirator when working with chemicals. At this point, your screen should be clean and dry and ready for recoating, and the fun begins again.